Now, the European Union and its governing body has come under heavy criticism for its delayed and slow coronavirus vaccine rollout. And on Wednesday, defending the bloc's stance on a slow vaccine rollout, the EU chief said that the Commission is partly to be blamed for being over-optimistic, overconfident and too late. However, von der Leyen also defended the Commission's oversight of vaccine orders. The EU chief said that it would have been unfair for the EU single market if just a few large member states had guaranteed those doses.
And yet, it is also a fact that today, in the fight against the virus, we are still not where we want to be, because we were late to authorize. We were too optimistic when it came to a massive production, and perhaps we were too confident that what we ordered would actually be delivered on time. I cannot even imagine what could have happened if just a handful of big players, big European member states, had rushed to it, and everybody would have been left empty-handed. What would that have meant for our internal market and for the unity of Europe? In economic terms, it would have been nonsense and it would have been the end of our community.
Speaking in the European Parliament, von der Leyen reiterated the Commission's promise to have 70% of the EU's adult population vaccinated by the end of summer. The EU chief also put blame on big pharmaceutical companies for not keeping vaccine production up with scientific advances. Von der Leyen's comments come as the European Union surpassed the grim milestone of the 500,000 COVID-related deaths. The EU is currently fighting off the remnants of a second surge of the coronavirus infections. The latest surge has kept communities from Portugal to Finland under all kinds of lockdown, curfews and restrictions, as authorities race to vaccinate as many people as possible. The European chief acknowledged the bloc's mistakes for creating a row with Britain last month. Earlier, the bloc briefly envisaged to trigger an emergency provision in the Brexit deal to control COVID-19 vaccine exports from the EU. The EU is currently at loggerheads with Anglo-Swedish drug maker AstraZeneca. Recently, the EU introduced tighter rules on exports of COVID-19 vaccines that could hit shipments to nations like the United Kingdom. For more details, let's quickly get in a sense of perspective as I'm joined in by our correspondent Lucy Huff, who's joining us live from Brussels. Thank you, Lucy, for joining our newscast. Now that von der Leyen has admitted the shortcomings in EU's vaccine strategy, how does EU plan to ensure a quicker vaccine rollout in Europe, and how have MEPs responded?
There's been real anger directed at Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission chief, and the EU's vaccine strategy in general during this appearance in the European Parliament. This morning, local time, we were expecting an apology from Ursula von der Leyen, particularly in relation to the triggering of Article 16, a Brexit clause that would have seen the reintroduction of a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland and has led to tensions at that border crossing in recent days, in recent weeks, and much criticism, not least from the EU, but also here in Europe as well. She did issue that apology and also said that the EU had been over-optimistic in expecting pharmaceutical firms to meet supply targets, and that process essentially would run seamlessly. The EU has run into serious trouble, not just with its contract with AstraZeneca for the Oxford AstraZeneca shot, but also with Pfizer, who until recently were delivering much less than they were expecting to due to manufacturing changes going on in its plant in northern Belgium. So in recent days and weeks, the EU has been putting pressure on those pharmaceutical firms to meet those demands, those supply targets. There is hope here that in Q2 and Q3, those companies will be able to increase their capacity. But there has been criticism from MEPs, not just of the procurement strategy, but for the contracts signed with those pharmaceutical firms. A demand from several MEPs today for greater transparency about what exactly was agreed with those pharmaceutical companies. And if indeed those targets are not met by Q2 and Q3, there is a warning that the EU could face rising Euroscepticism in cities, in countries like Germany and France and Italy.
Right. Lucy, the EU's vaccination program has become an important political test for the European Commission President. Is this now a critical test for von der Leyen as well?
It's certainly the most personal criticism that she has had during her tenure of just over a year. The only person who's received more criticism in recent days is her chief diplomat, Josep Borrell, who's being very much criticised for what's being described as a disastrous trip to Moscow towards the end of last week. But certainly analysts here saying that this has been immensely damaging for Ursula von der Leyen, and certainly there has been a sort of political dimension to all of this, given the speed at which the UK has been able to carry out its vaccine rollout. It's been compared to a speedboat, compared to the EU's tanker, dragging EU to all the 27 member states of the EU, compared to the nimble authorisation process that the UK has been able to carry out, and the speed at which it's been able to roll out vaccines and signing off those contracts with firms like AstraZeneca some 3 months ahead of the EU, and giving it the time to deal with issues with manufacturing processes ahead of the EU. And what we are now seeing is problems here in the EU. So yes, a lot of personal criticism of Ursula von der Leyen, and she was particularly criticised for throwing a member of her team under the bus and not taking responsibility for that herself. We saw a much different, much changed performance in the European Parliament, a very direct apology for decisions taken by her office and mistakes that have been made in this process under her watch.
Speaking of the criticism, Lucy, it's important to touch upon where the problem actually lies, be it under procurement, overzealous regulators and anti-vaccine populations. What are the broad reasons for Europe falling behind on vaccines?
There's a number of reasons as to why Europe has fallen behind. Part of this was the nature of the contracts signed with companies like AstraZeneca and Pfizer, which some legal analysts, although not all, are saying did not issue binding rights on specific delivery targets. So again, that's why there's been this call from MEPs in the last few weeks for greater transparency about what exactly was agreed. The AstraZeneca contract was released, but in heavily redacted form, particularly the specifics about those delivery targets. We're also receiving criticism about the speed at which the European Medicines Agencies, the EU's health regulator, was able to sign authorization for shots like the Pfizer and AstraZeneca shot. Here in Europe, the AstraZeneca shot was approved some 4 weeks after the UK, meaning we're already lagging well behind the UK on that, and has meant that the UK has had a real head start at the vaccine that is by far the easiest to handle in terms of handling temperatures, but also is a sort of much more commercial shot in that respect in terms of its ability to be rolled out nationwide. So some questions there, but also, of course, there are issues at moving with 27 member states as opposed to just one country such as the United States or the UK. So it is the specific, the way these contracts were signed that has led to some problems.
Right, 27 member states. That is the key word over here. Having said that, thank you so much, Lucy Hough, for bringing us all those inputs from Brussels. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.